As you know, there are 3 sections that are fixed
Cold.
in this series of I Got a Gift, and one of them is on books. And question is, what kind of books do you read, and if you have any books to recommend?
Okay, books. It depends a bit if you're thinking about whatever I read or something to recommend that is from the field, from the field of early music or so. If you're thinking of the popular reading, I tend to get good recommendations by a friend, and they are always a winner. And I particularly like good science fiction. And Neil Stevenson is one of the authors that I enjoyed there. Anathema is a book that I would really recommend. I enjoyed that one. And other popular reading that I sometimes do in between includes the Terry Pratchett Discworld novels and Game of Thrones. I read all those. That kind of stuff, bit of fantasy and science fiction, that's quite nice. But if you're thinking about literature that refers to early music, there is one book that I had actually recommended before, which is The Idea of Music by Herbert M. Schuler. I don't exactly know how, this is a German name, but in America, I don't exactly know how to pronounce it. Very interesting guide through how the late antiquity thought about music until the high Middle Ages, how thinking about music developed over the ages. It's a very comprehensive, good read.
The idea?
The Idea of Music.
The Idea of Music. Good.
Yeah, it's a very good one.
You read books, and I can tell you've read a lot of books, because behind you have a whole collection of books.
A lot of them are also editions, and I haven't actually read through all of them. A lot of them are also references.
But anyway, I love that when people have so many books, because I love books. And next section is about recordings. If you have any recordings you think are worth listening at least once in a lifetime.
Okay, there could be some standard answers regarding recordings that I used to like, but I won't talk about Beatles or anything like that. But I think more interesting might be the music that brought me into medieval music, or that inspired me as an early musician. And I would really recommend a CD or an album that my former teacher, Crawford Young, recorded. It was a solo album. I mean, he had some supporting artists on that one, but it was kind of his solo album called Intabulations. Intabulations. The thing is, this is basically impossible to find anymore. As far as I know, it's out of print. And I only have a copy, and I have it. I recommend it regularly, and I hope it will be republished at some point. But I found that very inspiring to see what you can do with a plectrum lute, also soloistically. Very virtuosic, very sensual playing, and that was very inspirational. I listened to that just before I came to the Schola, and that got me into touch with that performer and teacher.
Yeah.
Another one could be Triste Plaisir by Lena Suzanne Norin with Randall Cook and Susanne Ansorg. This is about Burgundian chansons, and I think they've really captured the essence of what a Burgundian chanson is of the 15th century. I found that very inspiring. And now coming to think of it, there's another one that I would recommend. That's John Flagle's solo CD, World is Bliss. And that is an album. John Flagle sadly died. He was a singer also with Crawford Young's ensemble in the 90s. And he had this solo project where he accompanied himself on the harp and a bit on the lute and on the fiddle, and played mainly English medieval songs, some of which he had composed a melody for. So some of the melodies are his own, but there's also a folk-like atmosphere that pervades this album. But I found that highly inspiring. So these
Cheers.
are some that I really enjoy. Yeah.
And now we come to the last part of our coffee, which is in case somebody in 100 years, none of us would be here, in theory, maybe, who knows, but I don't think
Very likely,
so.
yeah.
Very likely. If someone in 100 years would watch this video, would watch you, Marc Lewon, what message would you like to leave for that person?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's very hard. When people make predictions into the future, they tend to be always wrong, or hilariously wrong. So it is very hard to send a message into a time that you might predict very wrongly. So what I would do is I would think back 100 years and see what people back. I would stay within the realm of my expertise. So performance of early music, or thinking about music of times long gone by. And I would think back maybe 100 years, see what people of the early 20th century or even the 19th century have done with early music, with medieval music, and how we now think about that and what they tell us. And sometimes I think sometimes when we look at what former scholars have done in editing or talking about medieval music, and particularly about performance of early music, sometimes we tend to smile a bit and belittle it a bit because we know so much more now. I think often enough we do them wrong. And I have read some things, even from the 19th century, where I thought, man, they were so far advanced in thinking about this music. Respect. And I would humbly ask, if I go now 100 years forward, I would humbly ask the future generations to view our efforts benignly and with a grain of salt. Yeah? We also try to make a living, and sometimes things that come across as factual, or we believe it must have been like that. But in 100 years, there will be other ideas around, and we've been told this by experience. Yeah. That we won't stay being right now, and but that there may still be some things that we did now, that we're doing now, that may have some worth even in 100 years time.
Good. So Marc, thank you very much for joining us in this series of A Coffee With. It was a pleasure. Of course, there are always lots of things I'd like to speak about with you, but
Of course,
time is up, and that's life. That's how life works. So,
cheers, mate.
Yeah. Cheers. Thank you very much.
Cold now.
Yeah,
Okay.
cool. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Michael.